Have you or your group organized last night's burning?
We organize people. If people burn, they burn.
In 1968, united under the banner of Black Power, young people were taking their revolutionary new politics to the streets of Memphis.
The leadership of the invaders were folk heroes in the community because, they stood for what was right. They walked the talk.
They were just cool dudes, They were like ahead of their time.
We all had the same problem. The question was how to do something about it.
That became the Invader Organization.
Several thousand demonstrators are participating in this largest civil rights demonstration ever in Memphis, Tennessee.
Dr. Martin Luther King has planned the march in support of striking garbage collectors.
The city of Memphis has willfully attacked the black community. Dr. King is going to come in here. He's going to have to come in here and analyze the situation and meet the needs of black people here.
What of your aides told you about the cooperation that has been arranged with the young people?
I've met with the leaders of the young militant organization here in Memphis. We don't have any problem with many of the young militants who talk in terms of violence. Our method is to communicate with them.
I don't give a crap what America says. America is just a part of humanity. And humanity is not ever going to make a change about anything without what? Some disruption, some actual disturbance.
The Invaders is a new civil rights documentary that highlights the rise and fall of a militant black power group based in Memphis, as you just heard. Creation of the Invaders and their final negotiations with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. literally just minutes before his assassination on that balcony at the Lorraine Motel there in Memphis. Joined in this hour by the film's director, Pritchard Smith, and John B. Smith, no relation, who founded the Invaders, John B. Smith that is, and aligned themselves with groups like the Black Panthers. Pleased to have Pritchard on with us for this hour. Pritchard Smith, how are you today, sir?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you for having us.
It's good to have you on. John B. Smith, how are you, sir?
I'm doing excellent, and I'm very proud to be on your show, Tavis. You've been one of my heroes for years.
You were kind to say that, man, and I feel the same way about you, so thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and Pritchard for the hour. I spent a lot of time in Memphis, as you may know. I've written a book about Dr. King, did a documentary at the Lorraine Motel, so I love the city of Memphis, and I love the story of King. I love the story of the Invaders. In my book, Death of the King, about the last year in King's life, I've got a couple of chapters about the Invaders. So I've done the research many years ago on the Invaders, and I'm just honored to be in dialogue with you. Let me start by asking a broad question, and we'll narrow our way through the hour as we move, John B. Smith. But tell me, take your time, we got an hour here. Tell me the story. We'll get it, of course, in the documentary, but give me the top line of the story of how the Invaders came to be in the first place.
The Invaders didn't start out as the group that we were organizing. We began with a group called the Black Organizing Project, and this group developed because of what became known as the gas cap incident. Mm-hmm. That incident occurred about a year after I got out of the military. I'd gone to the military in 1966, served in Vietnam, and came home to Memphis in 1967. I'd gotten a job at the Memphis Defense Depot, and I was living what I call the playboy's life. Mm-hmm. I had a nice job. I had an apartment. I had fixed up my sister's 1962 Volkswagen. So that was the life I had created. In the meantime, Charles Cabbage, who I had known since second grade, we lived in the same neighborhood. We went to the same schools. We were students at Carver. Charles had gotten a scholarship to Morehouse to play basketball, and I went to the military. Well, in '67, he graduated from Morehouse and returned to Memphis. And when he returned to Memphis, he literally brought Black Power to Memphis. Before the NAACP and civil rights. Well, when Charles came home, we all had a favorite place we hung out, and this particular afternoon, I was unaware that he had come home, and so one of the guys said, "Hey man, here comes Charles Cabbage. He talking that Black Power stuff. I'm going inside." So I'm unaware into this. I look around and I don't see anybody that look like Charles. I see a guy coming up the street with his big afro. He's got on dark shades, a beard. He's dressed in a dashiki and Levi's and sandals. Well, when we graduated from high school, we were clean cut guys, I was a good colored boy. We wore ties and slacks and shine shoes. So this looked absolutely nothing unlike the Charles Cabbage that I knew. So I'm like, "Where's Charles?" And the guy said, and I looked, and then I could see the resemblance, and I'm like, "Oh my God, he's been brainwashed." I gotta save this guy because that's my friend. Well, this particular night, and we were driving over to my apartment because we had a party planned. And I stopped to get some gas, and I pulled into this gas station that I usually stop at, and the attendant came out. This is before self-service. A white guy actually came out and pumped your gas for you. So when he finished pumping the gas, he tells me, that's $3.10. That was the price to fill up a Volkswagen at that time. And so he said, "But, you don't have a gas cap." I said, "What do you mean I don't have a gas cap?" He said, "Well, you don't have one." So I get out, and like I said, the Volkswagen didn't have an outside gas port. You had to actually lift the hood up to get to where you put the gas in. So I developed this process myself of doing this because I had lost a couple of gas cans. So I'm starting to pay attention to the fact that he says I don't have a gas cap. I figure it's somewhere in the hood. So I get out and look, and I don't see it. And when you grew up in the hood, when I was a kid, you hungry, you go in the store, you want some cookies or some chips, so you slide it inside your shirt and button your shirt up and just walk on out the store with 3 hands, And so since he hadn't gone anyplace, I started to look at him because I knew he had to have it on him if the gas cap, since the gas cap wasn't in the car. And I noticed this budge on his side, so I reached out and touched it. And it was my gas cap. But being an old white guy, he's all irate now about me putting my hand on a white man and niggas can't do that. And he's shooting me himself. And I'm like, "What?" He said, "Yeah, I'll call the police on you." And I'm like, "No, you don't have to call the police. I'll call the police." And this is very hard for people to understand. Why would a black guy call the police? Well, I had just gotten out of the military. I had served honorably. I'd been honorably discharged. I was one of those guys that grew up watching John Wayne and his heroism, So I was in that frame of mind about everything. So I'm like, "No, you don't have to call the police. I'm going to call the police because I got right." See, this was the nature of the debate that Charles and I had been having for these about 3 weeks. I was the good American colored boy, and I believed that the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and all of this. That's my defense. And Charles is telling me, "Hey man, look, when they wrote the Bill of Rights, y'all folks were slaves. You couldn't vote. You didn't have any rights." And I'm very, very adamant about what I believe, and my performance at the time was for Charles, because he was in the car, and this is the argument that we had been having playing out right there in front of my face.
Wow.
So when the police call, they don't come over and talk to me. They go in and talk to the white boy. And a lieutenant comes over and tells me that, look, you got to get in your car and get off and get out of the way, because there was about 8 other police cars that arrived during this time. And because I got a ride situation here, I got the control. I'm like, ride? Where? And I look around, and there are people in the neighborhood had stopped because of all these police cars, and they were watching what was happening. I was arguing over my gas cap. Mm-hmm. But then I realized that there's, people in the neighborhood wanting to know what's going on. So he tells me I got to leave, he's going to arrest me. And I tell him, no, I called you. I'm the victim here. That guy is a thief. So I'm not leaving till I get my gas cap. And of course, I get arrested.
Let me cut in. Let me hold you there 1 second, John B. Smith. I didn't want to cut you off. You were telling the story so beautifully, and I knew where it was headed. That you called the cops, and that you were ultimately going to end up being the one to get arrested. My question initially was, how did the invaders get started in Memphis to begin with? We'll get to the point of their connection to Dr. King in a moment, but I see where this story is headed, and I'm sure you see it as well. We'll let John B. Smith finish the story of how the invaders came to be, and we'll jump from there with the director of this documentary, Pritchard Smith, when we come forward, talking more about this new doc called The Invaders on KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley. That's a real Tavis Smiley. And your Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
Are you tired of feeling like the legal system is unfair to certain communities? I know I am. I'm Elizabeth Lashley Haynes, and that's why I'm running for judge. I want to bring fairness and equality to the judicial bench in LA County.
Vote for my wife. She won't stand for injustice in our home or in the courtroom.
November 8th, vote Lashley Haynes for judge, seat 67, and vote justice for all.
Paid for by Lashley Haynes for Judge 2022.
Hi, I'm Sedarius Blaine, actor from the Jumanji movies, The Big Leap on Fox, Charmed, and more. I started an all-inclusive luxury travel club called Top Shelf Getaways that's now visited 14 countries in the last 2 years and counting. Now, we're rolling out our local staycations spirit of adventure that we're known for right here in Southern California. Starting November 11th, come join us for a celebration of excellence as we honor some of Hollywood's biggest legends at the W Hotel in Hollywood, California. Our staycation will feature live performers, singers, magicians, mixologists, and private chefs, as well as a private screening of Black Panther Wakanda Forever at the world-famous TCL Chinese Theater and an after-party. Transportation from the hotel and overnight stay at the W are included. November 12th will be our bottomless brunch pool party sponsored by El Cristiano Tequila. All of this for only $500 per person, $800 per couple, or select the locals rate to indulge in Friday night only. Follow us on Instagram or visit TopShelfGetaways.com to secure your tickets today. We can't wait to see you. And don't forget to wear your all-black cocktail attire.
Hi, I'm Joe Gatlin, Vice President of the San Pedro Wilmington, Palos Verdes Peninsula NAACP branch. I am supporting Daniel Sandoval for the Los Angeles City Council. Tim McCoster's campaign is using bullying and intimidating tactics against local businesses and local individuals who don't support him. We need a healer, not a divider. I am giving my full support to Daniel Sandoval for Los Angeles City Council and rescinding my endorsement for Tim McCoster.
Paid by Sandoval for LA Committee ID 14500.
Will they find a home? Sponsored by Geico. Steve is intrigued by the paranormal.
Otherworldly spirit.
This has different taste.
I'd like my house to not be haunted.
Compromise is tough, but these two won't have to compromise when they bundle home and car insurance with Geico. It's easy, and they could save even more. In the end, Steve and Janice found a renovated Victorian that's only haunted from 9 to 5.
Okay, wife's home. I gotta bounce.
Bye, Steve. Bundling without compromise at Geico.com.
We're not for everybody, but we're for everybody. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
All right, John B. Smith, I'm watching my timer. Give me the rest of this story. So you call the cops. They show up. People all around. Multiple cop cars have shown up. Police vehicles, I should say, are on location now. And you end up being the one arrested. Finish this story for me, sir.
Well, like I say, you have to really remember this is 1967.
Mm-hmm.
And I was raised to be a good colored boy. My mother, she was active in the NAACP, and the NAACP, that was the image in Memphis. And at that time, Black Power was being attacked as anything, as something destructive in the Black community. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want to be identified with that. But this incident was right in front of my face. Mm. There was no way I could deny that I was being treated differently by the law, not by this white guy, which is what I believed in. That was my whole Vietnam experience, what I was doing. And then there was Charles, who had brought Black Power to Memphis. We grew up the same way, but he came out of it thinking totally different than how I was thinking. So that incident is what really changed my mind about how I was approaching life. So the NAACP, they got involved in it. And, of course, when we went to court, they got the charge dismissed. But I was affected forever. That change was what got us started trying to organize Black student associations on the University of Memphis campus, on Southwestern, which is the school that Kobe Smith attended at the time. So we were trying to put together what we call the Black Organizing Projects, which would bring students all over the city together in an organization. But at the same time, when Charles came home, he was from a large family. And his brothers and sisters were high school students at Carver, which was right in the back door of my apartment. Mm-hmm. So they were trying to get Black books in the library. They wanted to wear Afrocentric dress to school, afros and things like that. And the City Board of Education had outlawed any kind of Black identification or African identification. Mm-hmm. So they were throwing kids out of school. And this is when I became aware of created what you call a little party group. On weekends they throw parties for each, for themselves. And one of the guys in the group was an artist. His name is Donnie Delaney. Well, Donnie had cut off the sleeves of his Levi jacket and decorated the back and wrote the word invaders across it. And that was intriguing to me. So I said, Donnie, what's that about? At the time, there was this movie on TV about aliens that came in from outer space and they were trying to colonize the earth. And their thing was they were trying to make this their world. And that's what Donnie identified with. With us as Black Power advocates, we were trying to make this our world. So that's when I wrote the word invaders on the back of my jacket. Continue the work that Charles and I was doing. So that's how the Black Power, the Black Organizing Project and the invaders began.
No. It's a powerful story, and I didn't want to interrupt because this backstory, this history lesson is fascinating for me. And when you see a documentary that everybody's talking about, and Nas is the narrator of it, and I know the connection to Dr. King, which we'll get to here in a little bit. It's always fascinating and to know the backstory of how this organization came to be. So you told the story beautifully. I thank you for sharing that. Let me build now on how this organization came to be. Let me go to Pritchard Smith right quick here. Pritchard, you know this backstory now because you're the director of this project. You've heard these stories, and you're the one that brings this to us on film. But from these humble beginnings, these righteous beginnings. This organization ends up doing some significant work in the city of Memphis. What is it about this story all these years later that you think we need to understand? Everybody knows the Black Panthers, but nobody knows about the invaders and the impact they had in that city. Why was this a story you thought needed to be told?
Well, I'm originally from Memphis, and my mother was a librarian at an all-black school in '68 when King was assassinated, and she actually mentioned, I think some of her kids identified as invaders, and I was like, wait, who? The invaders? Why don't I know about this? I grew up here. And I was in town visiting her for Christmas, and later that night I was at a party and with a friend of mine, and he had actually met Lance Watson, who also was an invader. And he started kind of filling me in on it. And once we realized that, the whole connection between King for the civil rights, for the sanitation strike riot, and we started kind of connecting the dots here. I mean, it was clearly a police riot, but every newspaper that we looked at when we went to the library the next day, blamed this group. So from there, we just started reaching. We were like, wait, are these guys still alive? My background is film, and so I just instantly saw a documentary here, and the deeper we got into it, just the more fascinating it became.
Yeah. So let me. I'm watching my time here, John B. Smith. Let me advance this story right quick here, since we've referenced the name of Dr. King a number of times. Let me just do this in short order to keep the audience up to speed where the story is headed. So the invaders gets started based on the story that you've shared with us. The invader organization gets established, and as Pritchard said a moment ago, Dr. King comes to town for a sanitation workers strike. We had Reverend James Lawson on this program some weeks ago, in fact, John B. Smith. So James Lawson, as you know, in Memphis at the time, invites Dr. King to Memphis. King agrees to come. And people don't realize that when King was assassinated at the Lorraine Motel, he was back in Memphis for a second sanitation workers march, because the first one, as Pritchard said, ended in violence. And so King is back in Memphis to do this right the second time. He was so disappointed. Rocks and bottles. And matter of fact, King got hit in the head in that first march. So the march just didn't go well. King goes back to Memphis a second time. It's on his second trip to Memphis for this sanitation workers strike that King ends up being assassinated. Just a quick part of the story there so people can follow along here. To the point that Pritchard made a moment ago, that first march that ended in violence, the invaders were blamed for that. The invaders were blamed for causing that sort of mayhem. Tell me what really happened.
Well, most people, because this happened in Memphis is not a big news site, so a lot of what happened never made the papers, or if it made the papers, it made the papers the way that the march was. Well, see, the sanitation strike was the result of the city of to do anything for sanitation workers. Sanitation workers were the poorest of the poor. They only made $1.75 an hour. They couldn't use the locker room. They didn't get any kind of pay to be off for sick or vacation. And so when they were inclement weather, they would send the black sanitation workers home, while the white sanitation workers could go back to the locker room and sit in the locker room until the weather cleared up. But they were still on the clock. The black sanitation workers developed this idea of how to stay on the clock. They would get in the back of the truck where the compactor was, and the compactor would shield them from the rain or whatever the bad weather was. And then when the weather cleared up, they could get out of the truck and they would stay on the clock all the time. Remember, they're making 5 cents an hour. They didn't even buy the tubs for the sanitation workers that they picked the garbage up in. And when the bottom would rot, and they would put stuff in the bottom to keep the garbage from falling out, but the liquid that would be in there would run down on them on their clothes, and you could smell them when you walk by or when they got on the bus. You knew a sanitation worker on the bus. because of the way they fell. So this particular day, the 1st of February, 2 black men got crushed to death because the city wouldn't repair damaged equipment. That was one of the grievances that they had over the years. So with the death of Eccles and Coles, they walked off the job because they refused to continue to work under those conditions.
Exactly. Let me jump in right quick for some news, traffic, and sports. And so you hear John B. Smith advancing this story. We're working our way up to how this sanitation workers strike was called in the first place. So 2 of these black men are killed in the back of one of these sanitation trucks. So for those who only know that King was assassinated in Memphis, you're getting a history lesson now on all the things that led up to King being in Memphis in the first place. They're there for dignity and for the respect of the humanity of these black workers, two of whom I should say are killed in the back of a truck. We'll continue the story and give you the more understanding of why this documentary, The Invaders, is something you ought to see when we come forward after news, traffic, and sports on KBLA Talk 1580.
Quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Mike Moore, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. In Mississippi, Governor Tate Reeves is denying recent claims that the state has populated city of Jackson for federal water infrastructure funds. In an 11-page letter sent to U.S. Representatives African-American Benny Thompson and Carolyn Maloney, Reeves said that the state has approved every application for loans under the Mississippi State Revolving Loan Fund. Now some weather concerns. Parts of Florida's East Coast are under a hurricane warning due to Tropical Storm Nicole. The National Hurricane Center says Boca Raton is one of the cities under the warning. The storm is currently about 460 miles east of West Palm Beach and is moving at about 9 miles per hour. It has sustained winds of 50 miles an hour. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
On the 110 northbound, we saw that SIG alert. All lanes are closed. Avenue 52 to Via Marisol, and on the southbound side, closed between Avenue 60 and Via Marisol because of flooding in lanes. In Highland Park, 110 north at Avenue 52, we've got a wreck working in the carpool lane. And on the 60 westbound at Diamond Bar Boulevard, an accident clearing to the shoulder.
Game day or any night, order Stonefire Grill's famous tri-tip baby-back ribs or grilled salmon paired with garlic mashed potatoes or barbecue chopped salad. Now 13 Stonefire Grill at their newest location in Old Town, Pasadena. StonefireGrill.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
This is the news Clippers fans did not want to hear. Clippers coach Tyronn Lue said Kawhi Leonard will be out indefinitely. Leonard is having setbacks while recovering from ACL surgery on his right knee in July of 2021. The Clippers outscored Cleveland 21-6 in the final 4 minutes last night to cap a comeback win. 119-117 was the final, 26 for Paul George. The Lakers are now 2-8 after losing by 23 at Utah. There are no NBA games on the schedule tonight. The league wants fans and players to focus on voting and voting awareness. Make sure you follow the NBA's game plan. A lot of brave people back in the day fought and died to give us the right to vote. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. This sports report was brought to you by MVP Accident Attorneys. When it comes to your settlement, we're slam dunk. Call 833-MVP-WINS or check their website at themvp.com for a free case review.
When you're the victim of a car accident, hiring the right law firm can be the difference between a rewarding settlement and striking out. Call the pros at MVP Accident Attorneys at 833-MVP-WINS for your free consultation.
Call me your MVP.
This is Urban Magic Johnson. Today, our city faces a crisis. A crisis of violence, homelessness, and soaring rents. And nobody is better equipped to tackle that crisis than my friend, Karen Bass. Karen worked in the emergency room, taking care of crime victims, making decisions that were a matter of life and death. She served as Assembly Speaker during the financial meltdown, doing the difficult work needed to rescue our state budget and protect the programs people rely on. As our next mayor, Karen will do what she's always done. When there's no room for error, she'll lead with her smarts and lead with her heart. On November 8th, please join me in supporting Karen Bass for mayor.
Paid for by Karen Bass for Mayor 2022, General. More information at ethics.lacity.org.
Hey, California, abortion rights are literally on your ballot this year. Voting yes on Prop 1 protects your personal health care decisions by putting the fundamental right to abortion and the fundamental right to choose or refuse contraception into the state constitution. So no judge, no politician, and no ban can restrict your decision-making about basic that everyone deserves the respect and dignity to make the decisions that are right for them and their families. Vote yes on Prop 1 and mail back your ballot by November 8th. No stamp needed. Together with the Black Women for Wellness Action Project and the California Legislative Black Caucus, we'll demand reproductive freedom and protect abortion rights for generations to come. Vote yes on Prop 1. Ad paid for by Yes on Proposition 1, supported by healthcare organizations, Planned Parenthood affiliates of California, and Senator Tony Atkins Ballot Measure Committee. Committee major funding from Federated Indians of Greater Rancheria.
We're not ratings driven. We're engagement driven. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580. Check it out.
I'm Tavis, Smiley. This is KBLA Talk 1580. So glad to have you with us in our final hour today. Our guest in this hour are Preacher Smith and John B. Smith. No relation. Preacher Smith is the director of this powerful new documentary narrated by Nas. It's called The Invaders. John B. Smith featured in the documentary, one of the founders of The Invaders. And we're giving you the backstory to a group that is somewhat akin to the Black Panthers, who we all know about, but you may not have heard about the Invaders and the role they played in Memphis, the connection to Dr. King, the sanitation workers strike. So it's a bit of a history lesson in this hour, and John B. Smith is our professor right about now. Again, watching my time here, John, so you left us with the fact that two of these sanitation workers were killed in the back of one of these trucks, and so that leads us to the point of a sanitation workers strike. In that first march and strike that Dr. King was invited to by James Lawson, violence breaks out, and the invaders were blamed for that. How did that happen? What really happened that day?
All right. Well, we have to go back just a little bit farther because there were several incidents. The first incident happened downtown. The first time they marched, the sanitation workers and the calm group marched, the police attacked that march. Mm-hmm. Most people don't realize that it was about 1,300 sanitation workers walking back to Claiborne Temple, and the police forced them to walk on the sidewalk. But it was so many, some got into the street with police cars and hit them with clubs and macing them to make them stay on the sidewalk. That's when the community really learned about the sanitation strike. And that's when I learned about it, and I started going to the meetings down at Claiborne Temple. Mm-hmm. The other problem is that Dr. King had announced his Poor People's Campaign on the 4th of December. Mm-hmm. And he had gone on the road preaching in churches trying to get support for his Poor People's Campaign. But most civil rights leaders did not want to take on the federal government over party.
That is correct.
So they felt that Dr. King had taken the spotlight off of the middle class, which is what civil rights is really all about. The middle class goes, integrating schools, buying homes in white neighborhoods, getting jobs in corporate America. But Dr. King had become really dedicated to helping the poor because of the James Meriton March when he was shot down on the highway walking to Jackson. And during that march, he met with and ate in the homes of poor people. You know how we are, man. If the preacher comes to dinner, you kill the chickens or whatever you can to get a great meal. And so it was in that environment that poor people actually live. See, Dr. King, he went to the best schools. He was educated to be a middle class individual. He preached in the best school, best churches. So he didn't have that down nitty gritty experience with poor.
That's right.
And so it was that time that Dr. King really came to understand what poor people live like in America. And Mississippi is one of the poorest states still today. It is one of the poorest states in the Union. So he offered to come to Memphis to become a part of the sanitation strike when he learned that it was about poor people. Mm-hmm. So we as Black Power was not really a part of the organizing effort. We were like kept off to the side. So when Dr. King announced he was going to have a march, what we did was we started recruiting people to come to the march from HBCUs down in Mississippi, up in Tennessee, and over in Arkansas, and high school. And that march on the 28th shocked Dr. King because of the number of people that showed up. Art Gilliam, who's the owner and manager of WLOK in Memphis, he estimated that march at 50,000 people. See, that was the largest number of people in any march Dr. King had ever taken part in, because his largest march was the one from Selma to Montgomery, which was about 7,000 people. And when the police attacked the march, he was there. He saw that. And when the march was over, he wanted to know how did that crowd, where did all those people come from? Because they were all Black people. This is not like the March on Washington. Sure. There were white people and labor people, but this was a march of nothing but Black people. And they were poor, and that's what got Dr. King's attention. And this is what really important, Tavis, because Dr. King had decided to take 1 million people to Washington, D.C. To take 1 million people to Washington, D.C., he needed the preachers to provide their churches, to help raise money, and to get volunteers. But that wasn't happening. And this is why he saw the sanitation strike as his next best effort to get involved with poor people, because that's what the Poor People's Campaign was all about.
How did you all, John, end up being blamed for the ruckus that happened in that first march?
Well, this was because Mayor Loeb had decided not to allow Dr. King to get to City Hall.
Right.
And when the march reached Bill Street, which connects to Main, and we turned on Main, headed to Hall. After we got on Main Street, there's a street called Gayoso. There was a triple line of police across the street that would not let Dr. King go any further. Now, you won't see this any place but in the Invaders documentary. This is something that Pritchard and his crew found looking through the photographs. And it shows this line of police standing there with their clubs on, stopping Dr. King from going any further. That picture you see of him, it looks like he's being pushed forward. That's because the crowd surged behind him, and he's trying to stop. But the reason that Dr. King was able to, because of a woman named Cornelia Crenshaw. She had her car parked right there at Gayoso. And when the police started beating people on Bill Street, she was able to get him in her car and take him to back to the Rivermont, because that's where they were staying. They were not staying at the Lorraine.
That's correct.
They were staying at the Rivermont. So Dr. King was able to escape the kind of beating that John Lewis them got in the Selma to Montgomery march, only because Miss Crenshaw was there with her car. And that Cadillac that you see sitting in front of the Lorraine, That's why that Cadillac is there, because that was the car that she used to spirit Dr. King out of all that violence. See, so it had nothing to do with the invaders in terms of the violence. Mm-hmm. It was a police attack on the march, but it was because of the crowd that Dr. King realized that was another way.
Yeah. So what happens next in this story, which we're going to get to in just a second. I love these eyewitness accounts. I mean, I'm sitting there tickled because it's one thing to do the research to write a book like my book, Death of the King, or to read Taylor Branch's work or David Garrow's work, or all the brilliant persons, historians who are much smarter than I, who've written about this stuff beautifully. But it's a different thing to hear a firsthand account, an eyewitness account of a brother who was there when King was there for this march and all that happened. And so it's just it's amazing to me to hear John just retell this story so beautifully. So this is the moment in the story where King and the invaders come face to face. And I got, again, a couple of chapters in my book about this meeting where the invaders and King meet face to face. King wants to know not just how this march got to be so big. Who were these people? How did all these marches get there? Why did this thing get out of control? How did the violence happen? King is full of questions, and so King sits down face to face with these young black men and women and the invaders, and that's what we'll hear next when we come forward in this story with John B. Smith on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. Good thing we've got 3 hours. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
Governor Newsom not supporting making kindergarten mandatory. Maisha Cairo here. The Office of Governor Gavin Newsom released a list of bills from the current legislative session that he both signed and those that he vetoed. Among the bills vetoed was Senate Bill 70, which would have made attending 1 year of kindergarten mandatory beginning the 2024 to 2025 school year. Existing California law does not require children to attend school until they are 6 years old, the age that children typically begin first grade. Kindergarten is reported to help level the playing field for children who are less likely to receive high-quality child care or preschool. Parents and community members, what are your thoughts on all this? I'd like to know. Tweet us at KBLA 1580 #KBlackMinute with your thoughts.
On November 8th, voters can pick their community judge. Hello, my name is Holly Hancock, a deputy public defender. For 16 years, I have stood with individuals fighting for their constitutional rights in court. I am qualified to be your community judge because background determines future behavior, and compassion is always justified. Vote Holly Hancock in seat 70. Diversity matters. Paid for by Holly Hancock for Judge 2022.
Vote Heidi Feldstein Soto for LA City Attorney. City Hall to protect neighborhoods from crime and illegal guns. And as the first woman ever elected LA City Attorney, Heidi will stand up for reproductive rights. That's why Heidi is the only candidate endorsed by the LA Democratic Party, Planned Parenthood, the LA Sentinel, and the LA Times. Vote Heidi Feldstein Soto for LA City Attorney. Paid for by Heidi Feldstein Soto for City Attorney 2022 General. Info available at ethics.lacity.org.
Interrogating your assumptions and expanding your inventory of ideas. Let's get back to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
Pritchard Smith, before I get back to a bit more of the story right quick, watching this clock here. Ooh, this time is going fast. Before I get back to John B. Smith right quick, he gave you a huge compliment a moment ago about the fact that you all found some footage and some photos that makes this documentary, The Invaders, something that we have not seen as yet before. Tell me quickly about the research that one has to do to find the sort of footage, again, that we've not seen and all the stuff we've seen about the civil rights movement.
Yeah, thank you. I went to University of Memphis, and a couple of my professors, Steve Ross and I think it was mainly Steve Ross, did the At the River I Stand, which I'm sure you've seen. And David Appleby, I'm sorry. But they had showed that to me in school, and in fact, Kobe Smith was interviewed in that. And you know, I had seen it, but I guess it hadn't sunk in. But I knew that the University of Memphis, that they had made that film from cutting room floor stuff that the news stations were doing at the time in Memphis during that whole moment. And so I basically, because I had gone to U of M, now this is like I've graduated and this is like 15 years later, I just wanted like, okay, let me just look through this stuff. And they had about 50 hours of footage that nobody's seen. And I think, it was amazing to see the old footage of Kobe Smith talking to the NBC guy. But I think most especially the footage of Dr. King explaining having met with the invaders at the press conference at the Rivermont just blew my mind. I mean, here he is just saying this. Nobody's looked at this footage. This is cutting room floor stuff. And once I saw that, it just corroborated everything I was hearing from the guys. And by the guys, I mean the invaders.
Yep. John, I got 2 or 3 minutes right quick here in this segment. Take me inside that room. What was it like when the invaders went face to face with MLK?
Well, we were in awe, actually. I know I was of Dr. King, but he was so down to earth. He cut right to the fact that he had come to understand that taking 1 million people to Washington, D.C. was not going to be something he could do because he was not getting that kind of cooperation. Mm-hmm. So he wanted the invaders to become a part of the Poor People's Campaign and to go out and get in touch with other Black Power groups and ask them to become a part of his campaign, because in that way, he was saying if he could get that to happen, people to D.C., he would want us to work Memphis and the other groups work the cities that they were in. And when he had a demonstration in Washington, D.C., we all would have a demonstration on the same day at the same time, and that would demonstrate far more power and show that poverty was a national situation than just bringing all those people to D.C., where you couldn't really see the real condition. So that was the thing that he had come up with after the march, and seeing all the people that local people were able to pull together for a demonstration. So he was wanting us to help him to reproduce that in the top 16 cities in America. Mm-hmm. So, and that was the decision that we made, and the agreement that we made to support his Poor People's Campaign, and we left the room, with that as a plan.
Yeah. How would you say right quick that Dr. King interacted? And this is a very important question, I think. How would you say that Dr. King interacted with a room full of young Black militants?
He was comfortable. Mm-hmm. Dr. King did not see young people as a threat, because young people were the ones that carried, if you look at the footage, young people were the ones who had carried the civil rights struggle forward.
That's right.
And as I said, I think Dr. King did something for not only the civil rights movement, but the Black Power movement that nobody else could do. He put it center stage in America. He showed America what poverty was doing, and this is what really enabled the legislation that came forth on poverty, because it as an individual. And other civil rights leaders didn't feel that way.
Yep, they didn't feel that way, and they certainly weren't moving to organize in that way. Powerfully put, John B. Smith. Powerfully put. Our remaining moments with John B. Smith and Preacher Smith about this new documentary called The Invaders, narrated by Nas. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where we turn red lights to green lights and keep it moving.
Judges make life-altering decisions every day, but we rarely know anything about them. Their names sit at the bottom of our ballots, and when it's time to bubble in our vote, we aren't sure who to pick, or worse, we leave it blank. This November, we must vote for community lawyers who will bring fresh perspectives and experiences to the LA Superior Court. The Defenders of Justice are 4 women running to become your next local judges. They are Holly Hancock, Elizabeth Lashley Hines, Anna Slaki Raytano, and Carolyn G. Young Park.
Learn more at the defendersofjustice2022.com. This ad was paid for by Justice PAC by La Defensa, a project tied to advocacy for Hancock, Lashley Hines, Britano, and Park for Judge 2022. Major committee funding from La Defensa, Project to Tight Advocacy, Progressive Era PAC, and Smart Justice California Action Fund.
Allergies. I'm probably good to fly. I probably don't have COVID.
Take the probably out of your plans. Test for COVID-19 if you've been exposed, when you're feeling sick, and before and after traveling and gathering. Learn more at covid19.ca.gov. Brought to you by the California Department of Public Health.
This is Congresswoman Maxine Waters. If you like, you may call me Auntie Maxine. Tuesday, November 8th is Election Day. I'm running for re-election to the 43rd District, and as chairwoman of the Financial Services Committee of the House of Representatives, I'm fighting against inflation, and I will never give up on fighting for affordable housing, for the elimination of homelessness, organized labor, good-paying jobs, education for our children, veterans, Social Security for our seniors, and student loan forgiveness. Well, we must add to that safety and security for our communities and police reform. I will never back down on improving the quality of life for everyone. I will not be stopped, and I will always declare, on behalf of my constituents, I'm reclaiming my time. Don't forget to vote Tuesday, November 8th. This is Auntie Maxine.
For by Citizens for Wellness. Let's unpack a little bit more with Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues right now.
I've only got 3 minutes left in this conversation, John B. Smith. I can't do justice to this entire documentary, even with an hour. The Invaders, narrated by Nas. What do you think the legacy, what do you hope the legacy of The Invaders is that people will take away when they see this documentary?
Well, the one thing that beyond the past history, we need to look at the today history with entertainers like Nas, who's willing to put his reputation on the line to tell a story that most people don't know, or if they knew a little bit about it, they forgot about it. So my hat is off to Nas, and our thanks for telling a story that nobody thought was a story. With that, people like Pritchard and JB and Nas, this story would still be unknown to most people.
Yeah. Pritchard, let me give you one of the last words here. As a filmmaker, I started asking you earlier what it was about this story that so tugged at you in your heart that you thought it needed to be told. Clearly, you got it done. But as you look back on it, what do you hope the takeaways will be for people who see it?
I'm hoping people, especially young kids, watch it. And, you know, as we hear our guys tell the story from back in the day and they're looking at the photographs of just how young John B. and Charles Tavis were at the time, trying to help their community, get to a better place. And I also, I hope it shines shines a clearer light on who King was and what he was about. And just like everybody loves King, right? But he was compassionate beyond the stories that we've been told so far. And I feel like this just, finishes out the sketch of just how amazing Dr. King was.
Yeah. Last word to you, John B. Smith. All these years later, in a moment such as this, today's Election Day, we're encouraging people to exercise their precious right to vote. In a moment like this in American history, what does Black Power mean to you today?
Black Power means to me today everything that you see happening. I was a part of getting the 26th Amendment passed, which gave 18-year-olds the right to vote. And I think that is going to be the difference in this election. What 18-year-olds do. Their children are so much smarter than we think they are. And that was the thing that I saw in Dr. King, is his trust and belief in young people. He chose poor people over the middle class because of the young people and what they would do. So I give all the credit to Dr. King.
Yeah. It's a great place to end. We've been running a series of promos here about Election Day and about the importance of voting, one in the voice of Malcolm X and one in the voice of Dr. King. And it was fascinating for us to do the research to find King talking specifically about voting. And to hear Malcolm X talking about voting is just arresting in a variety of ways. And so today is Election Day. I thought it was a good time to have this conversation about this documentary called The Invaders, about a group that you might not have heard of, but you get to know, and you will when you see this documentary called The Invaders. I thank Pritchard Smith and John B. Smith for coming on our program. Wish both of them all the best and great success with this documentary. That is our program for today. 3 hours went away just like that, right? I hope you enjoyed all 3 hours of our program. I certainly did enjoy this program today. Back here tomorrow morning, Lord willing, to do it all over again, 9 a.m. to 12 noon Pacific time. Do not forget, once again, today is Election Day. Wherever you are listening, make sure that if you've not already voted early, that you get to the polls before they close in your neck of the woods here in Los Angeles. That means 8 o'clock tonight. And do not forget, all this evening at 35 past the hour, starting at 7 p.m., 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, we'll be doing political updates on this election day with Dolly DePrima, Aretha Martin, and yours truly all night tonight here on KBLA Talk 1580. Thanks for tuning in. Time now for the KBLA Midday Money Chain. Up next, Lynn Richardson, followed by Naja Roberts. Until tomorrow morning, keep the faith.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Isla, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Nearly 24 attorneys